Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, as many of you know, we've had a couple of defections from the Derby field, and consequently, we've had two additions. Practical Move contracted a temperature following his exercise this morning, and Tim Yachtine decided to pull him from the race. Lord Miles was also pulled by the stewards in conjunction with their scratching all of Safi Joseph's horses following two fatalities at his barn earlier in the week, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. But in order for us to get the full complement analysis and allow you to compare and contrast the two new entrants effectively, I've done workups on both of them using our 4 elements of handicap: form, class, speed, and pace. And that should allow you to have a vivid picture for your strategizing. And so let's take a look at the new contenders. Our first new contestant is in the 21 hole is Cyclone Mischief. So with the defection of Practical Move, that will move him effectively to the 19 hole with the other scratch. So Mandarin Hero will be post number 22, but it'll actually be in the 20 hole, just to give you a frame of reference. Cyclone Mischief we've seen before. We saw him in the Florida Derby and the Florida Circuit in general. You see he had a pretty good third in the Florida Derby, an okay one in the Fountain of Youth, where he was on the lead the majority of the race, and kind of a clunker in the Holy Bull, and that was back in his schizophrenic stage where he seemed to be going good race, bad race. He seems to have put it together, and he's become more consistent, and I think he's a plus for the field in that now we have more of a pace presence than we did previously. And I think there's only one choice for them, is just to send him and try to get him up near the lead. That's where he's going to be most effective. So from a form grade, he's probably a C. I think he's been running at a cut below. And I don't anticipate that anything that he's been doing training wise or in his Derby prep season is going to change that. So he's at a C. Class wise, he's probably into Mischief, who's got 2 Derby winners already, so we know he fits there. He's got plenty of stamina underneath. I don't think the 1.25 miles is going to be a problem for him. And they've enlisted Corey Lannery, from what I understand, to ride him. So class-wise, I think he's a C+. I think he meets the criterion to get the 1.25 miles. I just don't think he's necessarily going to be fast enough. And I consider him to be on the lower rung of competitors in this field. Speed-wise, his career high he got in the Florida Derby, which is a positive, but it was only a 91. He got a 97 Brisnet figure, and on the Thorograph, he got a 4.2, which is pretty good and probably indicates that he perhaps will have another move forward, albeit a slow one. I don't think logically, speed-wise, we could expect him to be amongst the top performers. Now, I've given him a pace grade of C+, and I did do the pace parameters, and we'll see that next. You'll see, and the Florida Derby Fountain Youth and Holy Bull, he's effectively run about the same on the 3rd fraction. So he's roughly around 51, and that's not terribly good. But his early fractions are getting a little better. So he's running on the front end a little bit more forcefully. And the fact that his 3rd fraction isn't changing, you can tell he's getting a little more comfortable around 2 turns. But he's not necessarily going to be able to carry his speed to the point where he'd be competitive in this race. And it looks like he's having incremental, if any, improvement. He's almost actually plateauing to a certain extent. So we look at his prorated 1.25 miles time, and you see 202.6 isn't bad, but in comparison to some of the others, I think that puts him well back. So from a pace standpoint, he gets a C+. I think he's going to run with these early, but I'll see him falling back late. So the overall verdict would be, based upon his grades, that he would be a toss. Conversely, Mandarin Hero has been really was a big surprise in the Santa Anita Derby. He ran a really effective second and gave Practical Move all he could handle. And many think if the race was a little bit longer, he would have won it. So that was pretty encouraging, and it certainly upgraded the chances of Derma Sotogake, because class-wise, we could give him a little bit more of a look. Now, from the pedigree standpoint, it's kind of weird because he's by Shanghai Bobby, and those of us who remember him, he was strictly a sprinter. He was not a 2-turn horse, but he was by Harlan's Holiday. And Harlan's Holiday, of course, sired into Mischief as well. So he has the blood for 2 turns, let's say. The mare, I'm not overly, the dam, I'm not overly familiar with, or that line, but her average winning distance is 7.8 furlongs. So they've buttressed the pedigree here with some stamina underneath. And that's the way the Japanese have been doing it: speed on top or bottom, and then stamina on the top or the bottom. You see his genetic strength value score is 51.83, which is pretty good in comparison to the rest of the field. And, of course, the dosage index and center distribution are not exactly accurate, but you see from them that 2 turns should be okay with this one. And I'll say by his last race that he did pretty well, and I'm going to even think that perhaps he can get 1.25 miles. So form grade, he gets a B+ based upon the Santa Anita Derby. In class grade, he gets a B because I still, that was one race, and he was, I'd like to see a couple more before I really know that he's a bona fide contender amongst these 3-year-olds, but he looks pretty good so far. From a speed perspective, he gets a B+. He got 100 Bayer, he got 100 Brisnet figure, and he got a 3.3 on the Thorograph, and those are all solid numbers. I do question the West Coast times a little bit. Sometimes they're a little bit inflated, and so I'll leave that to you to make your own determination how much weight to give it. Pace grade, we gave him a B, and we did the parameters, and we can take a look at those. We see for the Santa Anita Derby, he had a really solid race, and what's interesting is you see the first fraction was 56.29, which is pretty quick, and that translates out to 46 and 4. So that was moving pretty good. But usually the California pace times are a little faster. But the second and third call are interesting because they're exactly the same. He ran a 53.44 for both the second and third call. Now, generally, the second call is a little bit higher than the third call, and the first call, of course, is higher than that. So he kind of got a breather in the middle of the race, it looks like. And I think that was what allowed him to finish so strongly at the end, because that is a final fraction that would definitely give him the 1.25 miles in this case. And his average pace and sustained pace, the AP and SP, are pretty commensurate with a pretty good horse for a 1.25 miles. You see his prorated 1.25 miles time is 2:01 flat, which is extremely competitive here. Now, granted, this is all based on one race, and for his pace, he does get a B, mainly because it's based on one. I am going to toss for this reason. He's in the 22 hole or in the 20 hole. He has got a lot of work to do from the outside to get to where he wants to. Now, he's demonstrated some talent. He's demonstrated that perhaps he can be competitive in this field, and he could very well get into the money. But I think it's highly unlikely that he is going to win this race from the 20 hole, and that's why I've decided to toss him. So those two entrants are in the race. I don't know that we did him any favors by having them parked all the way on the outside, particularly since they're both runners who like to be up and near the pace. Oddly enough, Cyclone Mischief, a horse we've been maligning all the way through the prep season, is a welcome addition because I think he gives us that honest pace that we've been waiting for. I think it's fairly certain they're going to try to get him up near it. So that should help, and that makes the race a little more uniform and easier for us to make our decisions, I think. Mandarin Hero, I wouldn't talk anybody out of using him. I just think from that post he's going to be really up against it to work out a trip where he can factor in this race. But he certainly looks like he might be competitive within this group. We will have any updates that come along. We will certainly continue to apprise you of them as we go. And I think we've got a really exciting next couple of days. There's some really nice betting opportunities. And I hope our analysis has helped you in formulating your tickets. And I wish you the best of luck over the course of the weekend. And, of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. And thank you so much for coming by. And we really do appreciate it. And I love the way this community is growing. And thanks so much to those of you who have dropped information my way that you thought might be helpful, and it has been. So I thank you for that. And please keep the comments coming. I love to hear from you guys, good, bad, and otherwise. So enjoy the weekend. And don't forget one thing, and I remember this from last year, and maybe if I tell you a little story, it'll help. I know you're going to formalize a strategy before the Derby and before the Oaks, but keep your options open. don't get married to what you're going to do too much. Watch the tote board. And the reason I say that is because if I hadn't done that last year, I never would have got Rich Strike. But I looked at the tote board. I saw the public hadn't made up its mind about who the favorite was. Perfect opportunity to look for a long shot. Took a look at Rich Strike. Saw he was going all weather to dirt, coming off his career high buyer, going to run a big one. Why not? And boom, it happened. So it's a freak. It was a once in a lifetime, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been willing to be flexible in my strategizing. So I just throw that as a little bit of advice to some of you newer people in particular, and certainly want to formulate a strategy beforehand, but don't be afraid to call an audible if the tote board dictates that you should. So anyway, just leave you with that. Again, wish you the best of luck, and I'll talk to you soon. And until then, be well.